Alright, today we're going to do something interesting, and it's not playing the game, it's talking about the game. I am known as a connoisseur of hot takes, and I wanted to go through some of my hot takes today, because I like yapping. So, I actually haven't even bullet pointed this video, I just have a few thoughts, ideas. I'm mostly going to be talking about gameplay takes today. So no story takes like Finon and Dan Heng are boring characters. None of that. We're mostly going to... I'm just going to look at the character menu. And there's a few things that I want to talk about. First off, Dan Heng in Viability Lune was the best DPS in the game until Acheron came out, in my opinion. Also, let me preface this. These are all my opinion, and they're hot takes. You're bound to not agree. You're bound to disagree with these takes. I think Dan Heng in Viability Lune was the best DPS in the game until Acheron came out. And I know this may be considered a hot take. A lot of people think he was immediately power crept by Jingliu. However, the weird thing with Dan Heng, or not weird thing, but the thing about Dan Heng and Jingliu, Dan Heng had a really low floor. His teams, especially when he came out, had to be extremely optimized, were clunky to play, and could result in very lackluster damage. You're forced to use Yukong, which requires a lot of speed tuning if you don't have her E6. You're forced to use Luocha because the other sustains aren't SP positive enough for him to sustain a rotation. You can't really use Bronya, you can't really use... you try to use Tingyun because she's positive enough. Maybe use Pela. Jingliu kind of just gets thrown at the kitchen sink. You're using Pela, you're using Bronya. She benefited from Ruan Mei a lot. Jingliu was easier to build with slightly better results for slightly less effort. If you were to compare an E0S0, Jingliu and Dan Heng with unoptimal teams, Jingliu is going to perform better. You get their cones and start optimizing the teams. They're going to be a little more equal. Probably erring towards Dan Heng. And then you go vertical. And Dan Heng E2 is still absolutely crazy. And whenever he gets buffed, this is going to pump back up to one of the best cons in the game. Meanwhile, Jingliu E2 was a waste of 80 pulse. Yeah. As you start going vertical, Dan Heng is going to completely outperform Jingliu. Or was at the time. And still probably is. Because Jingliu is not great. Neither of them are great nowadays. But Jingliu is not, or in my opinion, was not ever better than Dan Heng. I think she was less effort for similar reward. And this started the power creep argument, where people were complaining, that Jingliu is better than Dan Heng. We already spent all of our pulls on E2 Dan Heng, and now Jingliu is suddenly better. I don't think that was the case. And I think E2 Dan Heng was a better DPS than Solo Topaz. I think E0 Dan Heng was a better DPS than Solo Topaz. Ratio is a weird case. Ratio was a better single target unit, which he realistically should have been, because he's an actual single target unit. But Ratio outperforms Dan Heng in single target, but struggles in blast content at that time. And then 2.0 didn't have any DPS, and then Acheron comes around. And this actually goes into our second hot take of the video. Acheron is the worst lightning DPS of the big three. I'm going to have to elaborate. So, Acheron is a character you saw. I pulled her the night she came out. I built her. She's well built. This is acceptable. A little low on rate, but she's being run with Sunday and Fu Xuan. Solid crit damage, good speed. A little low attack, but it's speed boots. Almost max traces. E0. But you're also going to notice I don't have Jiaoqiu. I have been saying, since Acheron first released, she's clunky, nihilities only cause her problems in team building, and she just wasn't really enjoyable to me at E0 when she came out. And I never really planned on getting E2. But I hated having to use Silverwolf and Kayla on her teams in 2.1. And since then, I have tried everything you could possibly imagine. I've run Robin with Pela. I've run Fugue and Tribbie. Where are they? I've run Fugue and where the fuck is Tribbie? Tribbie. I've run Sunday Pela. My Acheron is tuned to my Sunday. My Sunday is like half a speed slower than my Acheron. It's perfect tuning. And running Sunday Pela on that Flame Reaver MOC, I was getting like 14 cycles. I don't think Acheron holds up all that well. And this is especially at its worst if you don't have Jiaoqiu. If you have Jiaoqiu, she's competitive. But a data point that a lot of people like to ignore that was kind of glossed over in 2.7. In 2.7, because Sunday was such a big buff for Jingliu, people ran the math. Jingliu, at the time, with E0 S1 Sunday, E0 S1 Robin, compared to Acheron with either Jiaoqiu and a Harmony or Jiaoqiu Pela, was performing about 16%, 18%, one of the two, better than Acheron. And this is a 1.0 unit, and to the chagrin of many, male. That's my ultimate hot take. I'm going to interrupt the Acheron one. Male units are significantly better than people give them credit for. The game isn't about waifu creep. It's... Power creep can be found in the men, too. Dan Heng held the title of best DPS for a very long time, in my opinion. An entire game mode was built around Argenti at launch. Boothill, we'll get to him. Mida, we might get to him. Anaxa, I don't really think I have to say. Anaxa is competitive with Fei Zhao in a role that I don't think he was designed for. And it's weird. But, yeah. Jingliu outperformed Acheron when he got his best team. And Aglaia, I think, is very good, but I do think she has the flaw of she basically needs Huahua, and she struggles to zero cycle at E0 because of energy requirements. But, I mean, my gut tells me all three of them are loosely competitive with their best teams. And Aglaia and Acheron are going to scale better with verticality. But my hot take is that Jingliu is better than Acheron. And Jingliu is realistically competitive with Aglaia. And, well, I mean, there's two takes here. It's one, that Jingliu is competitive with Aglaia and better than Acheron. And two, that Acheron is just kind of like a mid-tier if you don't have Jiaoqiu. Acheron is the biggest fumble on my account. I cannot play her, realistically speaking. She does not work on my account. I've tried every combination of nihilities and harmonies, and maybe in the next couple patches, maybe Silverwolf Sunday, maybe Silverwolf and like Tribbie, maybe like Maybe there's a pair I just haven't tested, and maybe Silverwolf buffs could save her. But Acheron is borderline bad if you don't have Jiaoqiu, and I think Jingyuan is genuinely better, or not genuinely, generally. I've been like borderline slurring my speech all night. I'm not drunk, but I've been messing up every one of my sentences, and I don't know why. Next hot take. What do we got? Who out of these units? Boothill. Let's talk about Boothill. I think Boothill is the best break DPS. Now, this comes with the caveat that I have played Rappa pretty religiously since her release. I enjoy her playstyle, and I've played her a lot. And I am a Firefly main. I have E2 Firefly. And she's my second favorite character. So why do I say Boothill is better? I say this because Hoyo does a thing, sometimes it's less subtle, sometimes it's more subtle, where not only are they going to be shilling the new units of a patch cycle, like we've been seeing a lot of ice weakness at the start of Amphorius. Everything was like Ice Electric Quantum for Herta, Kestris, and Aglaya. But they will also push an element out to try and artificially ruin a previous meta DPS. For example, when we went to the Lofu at the start of the game, Quantum was completely phased out. And now I think this was partially because Silverwolf was seen as a design mistake, and they wanted to use they wanted to incentivize people who wanted to use Ciela to pull for Silverwolf, which inherently means that they can't really make things Quantum weak because Silverwolf's whole thing is implants. But we kind of saw that with Ciela and Quantum in the Lofu, and I think we really badly saw that with Jingliu and Penacony. The only Ice Weak enemy for the majority of Penacony, and I say majority because I know the Banana Academic, that group of TV dinosaurs, that is Ice Weak. However, that is an AoE fight that was released in 2.6, which was technically after the first visit to Penacony. Only Aventurine was Ice Weak in the first visit to Penacony. And additionally, Sam was Ice Weak in the beta. They took away her ice weakness to replace it with Imaginary, presumably to kind of keep Dan Heng relevant a little longer, and also to push Jingliu out, because the character with fire in her name didn't have an ice weakness. Why? I know that's a little cliche, but still. But I do think that Firefly has been victim of this in Amphorius. And Rappa less so, but Rappa kind of just struggles with lower damage. She's better at wave clearing. And just, in general, like, Rappa doesn't have the greatest time in Apocalyptic Shadow, because she can't play into Banana Academic. That fight, her shill for that fight is the fact that she can ignore the gimmick, and the AS version requires you to interact with that gimmick. So Rappa doesn't really work for it in that mode. But Firefly, they have been pushing a lot of 2 toughness bar enemies. They've been 2 health bar enemies. They've been pushing a lot of no fire weakness. And they have been pushing generally toughness creep. And a lot of you probably aren't noticing this, because either your Firefly or Rappa is benched, your Rappa is still clearing in Rappa time, she's doing 5 or 6 cycles on average, and you're comfortable with that, or you play Boothill, and Boothill directly scales on toughness damage. he scales specifically on max toughness. Which means that Boothill is disproportionately rewarded for toughness becoming harder to break. I mentioned this in my last clear video, but I'm the only one in my friend group who actually has to deal with toughness creep. My Firefly has fallen off harder than anyone else's in terms of or anyone else's break DPS in terms of just general use. Because, so my friend group, just to lay out some context, we have an E6 S1 Firefly main in my boyfriend. We have an E2 S1 Firefly main. We have an E0 S0 Firefly owner, an E0 S0 Firefly owner, and an E1 S1 Boothill main for break units. One of the two E0 owners also has an E0 S1 Rappa. Now, the two E0 S0 Fireflies are benched. The E0 S1 Rappa is benched. The E1 Boothill is thriving because of toughness creep. And the E6 Firefly is able to avoid toughness creep because of this. Weakness break efficiency can be pumped with hard verticality. For example, I believe Fugue E1 also does that. And Lingsha E1 does it for herself. Now, being at an E2 Firefly, she's not really the best anymore. She was never, in my opinion, the best. But she has definitely taken the brunt of Amphorius's changes to the meta, because we're moving away from break, we're moving away from fire, and we're moving into a lot of multi-health bar enemies again, and Firefly just doesn't thrive into that. Now, I think we're going to look at the 3.1 units, and I think we're going to call it. First off, we're going to talk... I don't think Mida's kit is that bad. Now, a lot of people hate Mida's kit. And they hate Mida's kit because of this line right here. This ability will be automatically used. I think... Yes, I do think that this is some degree of mischaracterization. And Mida is less of a berserker than we originally thought based on his design and his personality in the 3.0 story. However, I don't think it's that big of a deal. So, a lot of people think that this targeting is random. This is not random targeting, it is auto-targeting. It can fuck up. It's not perfect, but he still has stereotypical auto-battle AI. If you're clearing anything with auto-battle in general, Mida is not changing anything. And I get that having that interactivity removed is unfun. However, I don't think that is necessarily like the worst thing in the world. Yeah, it sucks. You can't really play him. But, well, first off, it makes up for it because he's strong as hell. Godslayer Be God has absurd scaling, and if you get his E1, Godslayer Be God is now AoE, and it scales off of the single target blast scaling, not the blast scaling. Which just makes him insane. He is one of, if not the best casual unit in the game, and that's another thing. I play in a circle with optimizers. We're zero cycling. We're trying to cut AV on Apocalyptic Shadow. We're trying to 80k. We're trying to speed tune. We're trying to do all that stuff. Mida is not for optimizers. I've been seeing some people say Phynon might not be for optimizers. And I don't think that's the worst thing in the world. I think having characters that aren't necessarily optimal, but are unique, is cool. FGO notoriously did this with their 5-star design, I believe last year, kind of erred towards this, where they stopped doing kind of generalists. They stopped doing, like, farmers that are just better than the last farmer, and they had a unit like Alco, who had an extremely unique kit, and she wasn't the greatest unit in the world, but she was cool, and she was interesting, and she was unique. And, I mean, there are a lot of units like that. almost every unit in this game is mechanically unique. But I think having a couple that have those mechanics favor casual players isn't the worst thing in the world. Mida is also just, like, he's pretty good. You just don't see a ton of content on him because the people who care enough to make content and the people who pulled for Mida and enjoy his gameplay are two completely different groups. I could not find an E0 S0 Mida 0 cycle last night because I saw Mr. Pokey one cycle using Mida on his free-to-play account, and I thought, I want to see if anyone's done this. This seems like something I haven't seen before. And there are none on English YouTube. There are some on Bilibili, but Bilibili optimizers are an entirely different breed of player. And I don't think it's the end of the world if characters are popular but can't be pushed. I mean, obviously, there's going to be some sect of the player base that wants to actually use their units to, like, zero cycle. I enjoy zero cycling. I don't enjoy the minutia of zero cycling. I don't enjoy putting 180 speed wind set on everyone. I don't enjoy, like, Von Whack. I don't enjoy zero cycle specific techs. But I like trying to push my favorite teams to zero cycle properly. And I can see how it would be frustrating for characters to be kind of unable to do that. But I also think there should be a place for those kids. And it's going to have to fall on someone. My last hot take for the video. We're going to Tribbie. And this is one that if you've watched all of my clears, you might see coming. I don't think Tribbie is all that great at E0. I think her E1 puts her 3 tiers, slight hyperbolization. She's E1, this is the most important support Eidolon in the game. I don't think she's crazy as a support outside of that. So she has 30% damage taken. She has 24% res pen, or all-type res pen. And is that it? And she has a degree of sub-DPS. And solid enough alt gain. And alt frequency. But E1 gives you true damage. This true damage is huge, and makes her significantly better for fights like Flame Raver. I want to give a practical example for where E1 Tribbie could have saved me. The Flame Reaver fight last rotation, I fought that a ton of times testing different teams. I fought it maybe 30 times with Acheron, maybe 50 times with Cass, another like 30 with Blade. But I took forever to find a zero cycle route. With the way my account was built, with my RMC being built like this, my Tribbie being built like this, and my Gallagher being built like this. It was not possible for me to zero cycle without E2. I struggled to get down to, or without E2 Cass. I struggled to get down to a 1 cycle at E0. E1 was just a more comfortable 1 cycle, and E2 was finally able to zero cycle, and that was still a struggle. With Tribbie at E1, I think zero cycling at E0 would have been hard but doable, and zero cycling at E1 would have been completely reasonable. E1 Tribbie is so big. And I also, a little bit of an addendum to this hot take that kind of hot takes myself, that makes my own point sound stupid. I don't think super highly of RMC. I don't think she's the craziest unit in the world, even though you have 30% true damage, which is higher than E1 Tribbie. But E1 Tribbie just makes life so unbelievably easy, and it's gotten to a point where I know a lot of people discount clears when a bad unit is using good supports. Like, I know there's the meme of a gif of like, oh, bad character does good clear on hard content, and then you mouse over it and it shows Robin, or same thing with ZZZ and Astra. I don't know what the Genshin equivalent would be, probably Shalonen at this point, although in my opinion it would be Zhongli. We'll get to Genshin hot takes another day. But I feel like I personally slightly discount clears that use an E1 Tribbie, because Tribbie just, she feels a little, not lacking, but she's definitely missing something. This is such a powerful E1. And that's not to say other supports don't have powerful E1s, but I think they're E1s you can live without. Bronya E1 is RNG. Sunday E1 is insanely strong, especially with Aglaia or Jingliu. Or even like Hyacine or Topaz, weird units. Sparkle E1, it's pretty good. I mean, it's better than Sparkle. Ruan Mei E1, absolutely huge. Fugue E1, absolutely huge. And Robin E1 is pretty strong as well. Robin E1 is what Tribbie does at base. Tribbie at base is an E1 Robin without Robin's base kit, functionally. And I don't think Tribbie's a bad unit. I still think she's probably the second best Harmony in the game, behind Sunday. And even though, mini hot take number, 4 of this tangent, Sunday is the best Harmony in the game. He has the least splash ability. I'm just gonna glaze over that. Sunday is probably the best isolated Harmony unit in the game. However, he hasn't had any unit that he fully synergizes with since his release. Aglaia wastes, since his release, Aglaia wastes a part of his kit. Herta doesn't want him because she wants one of these two. Mida wants him, but doesn't have a summon. Castris can't really work with him effectively unless you do some wonky tuning. Anaxa only wants him for the same reasons Mida does. He's better Bronya. And yeah, Sunday doesn't really have a unit he's made for yet, but he is the best in a saturated role by a wide margin, to the point where I think he's still the best unit, or the best Harmony in the game. Tribbie, I think, has that second place, but I think she's missing a lot without E1. And another thing, if I didn't get her Light Cone, and I know her Light Cone is circumstantially worse than circumstantially better than Dance Dance Dance, without her Light Cone, I flat out don't think I could have done any of the clears I've used her for, because the damage wouldn't be there. At E1, I think you can get away with E1 S0. I don't think you can get away with E0 S0 Tribbie all that well. Depending on the team, you might be better to use a Robin, or here's a crazy mathematical example. Excuse me. Ruan Mei at E1, if you have Castris and you have E0 Tribbie, is better than Tribbie. It's a small margin, depending on the sustain. If you're using Gallagher, it's about 5%, at least for my cast build. With Luocha, it's a little bit more sizable, I think. I remember seeing 15, but I could be making that up. If you're using Luocha instead of Gallagher. Although when I plugged in Luocha, it was equal. And I don't know how it works with Hyacine now. But, Tribbie is a strong unit, but I think out of all of the Harmonies that have been released throughout the game, she needs E1 the most. Robin can be used for most comps that you would use her on without E1. I don't consider her great for DOT until E2, but, like, she's fine at E0 for follow-up attack. Sunday is completely fine at E0 because he's just significantly better than Bronya and Sparkle. He's fine at E0 with anyone. And his Eidolons are really strong, but you don't need them. Ruan Mei works great on break teams and in general at E0, and with her E1 having been free, if you were a Ruan Mei owner prior to the anniversary, she's even better in that role, but you don't need her E2 at all, especially because this doesn't really work with Super Break. But Tribbie, I think, needs E1 the most out of any Harmony, and is very likely, like, 3 tiers better with E1. So that was the hot take list. I know it was just kind of half an hour of me yapping nonsensically, but let me do a quick, too long didn't watch of all the points. Firefly fell off a cliff, and Boothill scaled better due to MiHoYo kind of deliberately trying to force Firefly out of the meta through toughness creep and lack of fire weakness. Jingliu is stronger than Acheron at equal low investment. Acheron scales better with verticality, and at base investment, both Jingliu and Aglaya are competitive. Mida's kit design isn't necessarily a problem, and he's still a strong unit, even though he's not optimal to be played. Acheron is unplayable without Jiaoqiu. Dan Heng was the best DPS in the game for a significantly longer time than people thought he was. And Tribbie really needs E1 to really thrive. If you enjoyed the yap, thank you for watching. I'd like to do more kind of just sit down and talk videos like this. I know I did the thought experiment, and that was pretty fun. I don't really know how I could replicate that, do another example of it, but yeah, if you like the hot takes, thank you for watching. If you didn't like the hot takes, let me know your own hot takes, or let me know why you disagree with my takes in the comments, and we can talk it out. Next video, I promise, will finally be the 0 cycle. We're finally gonna do it. I'm finally gonna sit down, record it. It was possible without Hyacine, and it's gonna be even more possible with her. And I will sit down, like, tomorrow. Last night, I probably would have done this if I didn't have to grind Genshin for 10 hours, because I wanted to Scofia's weapon. But, yeah. Thank you for watching. Hopefully my takes weren't too spicy, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you.